So I guess this kind of segues into a good question, Randy. What was violent crime like over there?
Violent crime mostly happened around the United States military bases, sexual crimes, rapes, and things like that.
No.
I think of the US as kind of like Babylon 5 or Deep Space Nine or something. Like everybody comes here, so everybody puts a little bit of themselves into the culture. So this culture is like in the US here is pretty unique.
So that's why when you hear all these horrible stories about beheadings and stuff during World War II, it's because the culture was still stuck in 1608 or something, and but now they've got airplanes and cannons and ships and bombs and things, and hey, China, we're coming for you.
Welcome into another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Casey Rochford, and we would really appreciate it if you would like and share and subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate it.
Crap. I was going to crack my knuckles, but there, I've got a few cracks left. Oh, I could do it sideways too. That really drives people up the wall. So I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and Casey and I, we write our own music. It's available out there, iTunes, Spotify, and other music gathering places. So stick around to the end of the episode, and you'll hear a new song. There's going to be a timestamp down there. We got a website, ksmvidcast.com. If you're curious, it's kind of like a little bit of a backup. Casey, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I'm sure the viewers will love it because this is a topic which will probably guarantee no commercials. I thought we'd bring on a guest, Randy Jones, to talk about, we haven't really done a full on gun control episode since like episode 1. So
it was, that was like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
So welcome back, Randy.
It is very good to be back.
Did we catch you just getting off duty?
I'm
getting some Hogan's Heroes vibes now.
Who is this man? No, there's a reason for the madness here. I'm actually so far left that this should be burning off my skin. But there's a reason for part of my being here to wear this costume based off of a argument that we very often hear from the right about Nazis and gun removal, and we can get to that when you guys are ready for it. But it's not what the right thinks it is.
Yeah.
All right.
I've heard a little bit about that. We will definitely touch on that, I'm sure. So I figured this would be kind of a cool angle to go. Like you mentioned, you're so far left, and that tends to be where people are in more favor of more gun control and or banning altogether. It kind of varies on the individual, of course, but and then Eric is if anybody's seen at least like 3 episodes in a row, you've probably seen one of Eric's guns.
You might actually see a few in the background here.
Oh, yep. Count the guns.
1911, the PS90, and over there we've got the AK because, well, I've got my Zelensky T-shirt, so got to have the AK.
But I'm kind of in the middle, so I thought I'd participate in the discussion, but also kind of try to act as a mediator because I don't want to see it go too far off the rails. I think there's so much to talk about just in the concept alone that I don't want to get buried in statistics. And you know how I feel about statistics. And I know that gun control obviously invites a discussion about government, but I just thought it would be best to kind of get it out of the way right at the front to say, yes, Eric, we know it would be better if there were no government, but let's operate under the assumption that we have to find a way to make this work with what we've got. So,
well, the way I see it is kind of like a when in Rome kind of thing. Like sure, things could be different, but it is what it is, and you work within the confines of what the tools you have and the circumstances that you inhabit, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that I won't make some points around government, but yeah,
I mean, we can't not talk about government in this conversation.
Sure.
But
and I agree that like keeping statistics to a minimum is a good idea. Like, really, I think that's a bad way to have a conversation. Like just numbers. You might as well be a math class. Like we can talk about things
they're fine in the big picture sense.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's a way to kind of compare different things, but it isn't the only way to look at things. I would much rather look at things from a conceptual standpoint or a philosophical standpoint, I guess.
Or maybe experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're stripping already, huh?
It's warm. It's warm. I'm glad it's not yesterday.
Oh my God,
that we had, but it's warm. In fact, I'll probably flip this off too. But I just have a T-shirt on underneath here, so you got to watch a Nazi strip.
I feel like there should be some Bavarian music playing.
Oh man, I'll drink to that.
You should.
Although I'm drinking an IPA, so that's not really appropriate. Casey, what do you got?
I have as often I do, a very dark beer.
Well, that's more appropriate than this.
So I guess what kind of initially prompted us kind of talking about doing an episode like this was an article you had showed me, Randy, regarding how Japan handles gun control, and you have actually lived there.
Yes.
So your perspective, I think, is actually going to be a very good one because you've actually lived in a place where that has been the case, like gotten paychecks and stuff from that place.
And paid taxes and paid into the healthcare system over there, and lived in a Japanese house and all that stuff. So as you also know, I'm what they call a certificated pilot. They like to use that term in aviation, but I basically have a pilot's license. In order for me to use this license to fly an airplane, which can be a deadly thing, I have to take a medical test every so often. I have to take drug screening every so often. Sometimes it's randomized. I have to recertify every 2 years. Plus I have to have so many landings and takeoffs within a 90-day period in certain conditions, day or night, depending on the flying I'm going to do, in order to take passengers up. And the list goes on. It's very highly regulated. It's very controlled.
Wow.
And that I can relate towards how Japan handles their gun ownership over there. as you know, they have very few gun fatalities every year. It's also almost impossible to buy guns over there. And in order to do so, you have to, take a class, and you have to, oh gosh, I mean, there's mental health evaluation. There's, you have to recertify every year or two to maintain ownership. The police have to come and inspect your home once or twice a year to make sure you are storing your gun and your ammunition in separate locked areas. And I believe they only allow rifles and shotguns and no handguns, from what I remember. But that may be slightly incorrect. I'll have to double check on that. But basically,
that stands to reason if the whole point is home defense, right? Because that tends to be the best weapon in the home is a shotgun, correct?
right? Yeah.
Okay. Yes. As a person who knows a thing or two about firearms, a shotgun is the best thing for home defense. It's very devastating to an intruder. It won't necessarily overpenetrate and will say like kill your neighbor, even if you miss. It is very, very ideal for home
Especially
defense.
with buckshot, right?
Yeah. You get double up buck, perfect. That's all you need. Perfect thing for home defense. Yeah. I should have had the Keltec KSG out here. That's my home defense gun because it's a bullpup configuration, which I'm a big fan of that. Anyway, yeah. So just thought I'd throw that in there. Yeah. I mean, handguns could be reasonable. It depends on how much space you have, and the configuration of the place you live. But certainly a shotgun, especially a pump shotgun, like when you chamber around, it has a very distinctive sound that like it means business. So if somebody hears that and they keep coming, which probably wouldn't occur that often, because I'm pretty sure most people are going to get the hell out of there if they hear that.
Well, so I guess this kind of segues into a good question, Randy. What was violent crime like over there?
Violent crime mostly happened around the United States military bases, sexual crimes, rapes, and things like that.
No.
Yeah. Yep. Okinawa it still happens today. Even sometimes they'll kill somebody. They go out, the Marines go out, they get drunk, and oh, there's a cute girl, and like, oh no, you're gonna come with me back behind this dumpster here, but that's where most of that happens. Once in a while, you'll hear of somebody really flipping their lid and like taking a knife and stabbing somebody in the neck on the train or something. But I mean, there's not a lot of violent crime over there. But see, the other aspect of it too is they have a national healthcare system with access to various types of healthcare, including mental health. But they also have an interesting homeless population that resides in the train stations at night. They clear out in the morning. They go to work if they have a job, and they come back at night around 8 or 9 o'clock and set up their cardboard in obscure parts of the train stations. And they're very benign, so they don't do drugs. There's very few drug issues in Japan, unless, of course, you're in like the Yakuza gang and have like some kind of access that I'm not really too familiar with what they do, to be honest. But you fly into the country like Paul McCartney with a little bit of weed on your person, and you go straight to jail. There's not a lot of that at all. There's not a lot of drug abuse. They rarely prescribe opiates over there in Japan. That they only use morphine for like end of life care. Otherwise, it's various forms of NSAIDs for pain relief. So you don't have pill poppers, people snorting things like that. So there's not a lot of violent activity over there. You go out and you spend like $400 or $500 and leave your shopping bag underneath a tree. It'll stay there for a week, and you can come back and pick it up, and nobody will take it.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that kind of speaks to the difference between, say, like the US culture and the Japanese culture, like how very different they are. Like I don't see it as necessarily a difference of legislative properties or anything. It's something that's part of the people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of a chicken egg thing. You could argue all day which, if any, of those are causing or affected by a particular aspect of the culture. Like it's all a blend, but it's also all human too. Like we're not that different from each other.
Well, no, you're right, and I think like the Japanese culture has been around for a very long time, like longer than organized governments.
The
like
nation itself
systems
is 2,000 years old. And
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I think
A lot
that,
longer
and
than
it's
that.
also very isolated, kind of being
Mhm.
in the surrounded by water,
Right.
so and it's very homogenous, not entirely, but quite homogenous. So there aren't like all kinds of different cultures mixing together. Like I think of the US as kind of like Babylon 5 or Deep Space Nine or something. Like everybody comes here, so everybody puts a little bit of themselves into the culture. So this culture is like in the US here is pretty unique. It's very, I don't want to say dilute, but it kind of is.
And we're a young nation, and
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think we've got that adolescent smugness about us. Like, oh, like these other cultures are doing guns this way, but that would never work here. Like
In
we
Japan,
know what we're doing. We're smart. We're fucking young. I mean, let's face it.
Well, and sorry, Randy, I didn't. You were.
I was going to say Japan is also still to this day very xenophobic.
Yeah.
Although it is really easy to get a work visa over there, which is why a lot of Americans go over there to teach English. It's easy work. It takes 2 weeks, costs $70, and you're done, and then you can work. Whereas trying to get my wife a visa here took I don't know, 9 months and several thousands of dollars and several embassy visits and interviews and all of that. But in Japan, they're still fairly xenophobic, even against like other folks in Asia, the Chinese,
The Chinese, yeah.
the Koreans especially. But you go to some of the cities, like in Tokyo, Fukuoka, where I was at, Osaka. I mean, in the big cities, you'll see a white dude walking down the street every so often, once in a while, likely an English teacher, or maybe he's there on business for a company or something. But you go out to the smaller towns in the countryside where less people speak English, and sometimes you become more of like the novelty item. Like the word they use is gaijin, means outside person. And I remember one time walking through a grocery store, and there was a lady giving samples out, and she had this bullhorn, and she was saying in Japanese, "Oh, please come try this, please come try this." And then she saw me, and she said, "Oh, gaijin-san, please come try this sample." And everybody in the store heard it, and they like dropped everything, and all eyes were on me because I'm like the only like white guy. Because as soon as they said there's a foreigner here, like, where's the foreigner? Where's the foreigner? Anyways,
well, and that kind of goes to my point of that foreigners are a novelty there, because here in the US we got people from all around the world. Like you walk down the street and you're going to see people from everywhere. It's very, very common, and so nobody really cares
except Iowa.
I suppose so. Yeah.
It's interesting, like prohibition historically almost never really works.
No, yeah.
But what you're describing with respect to guns, at least, maybe not drugs, but it sounds like it's not really any form of ban at all. It's basically just very, very regulated and
very regulated. I mean,
safety oriented.
And that's how it's been ever since they had the new constitution once World War II ended. Now, before World War II, people had guns. I mean, they were introduced by the Portuguese when they had a little colony called Dejima, I believe it was called. And that's when they introduced guns to Japan, and that was back in, I think, like the 1600s. So we're talking about a very early type of musket. Maybe those ones where you have to have a little burning match on it to hit the plate there to.
That's called a matchlock.
Matchlock, that's what you call it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's what they were introduced to. And of course, when Commodore Perry came over in the mid 1800s and said, "Okay, you're gonna open up your port and start trading with us right now. Otherwise, we're gonna start, firing off some cannons." Then Japan went into this whole huge accelerated movement of modernization, building train lines, getting cannons, equipping an actual army, not with swords, but with rifles and whatnot. And their modernization process went a little bit too fast for how the culture could adapt to it a little bit. So that's why when you hear all these horrible stories about beheadings and stuff during World War II, it's because the culture was still stuck in 1608 or something. And but now they've got airplanes and cannons and ships and bombs and things, and hey, China, we're coming for you.
And
Yeah,
we're building the Yamato.
Right.
And that's an interesting observation culturally. The Man in the High Castle kind of captured that really well, I think. The whole, what if Hitler and Japan had won and divvied up the United States, that kind of I don't know, honor-based sort of culture carried on and into the 1960s in the story and stuff. And anyway, that's off topic.
Well,
But okay,
sorry.
so do you think anything like that could ever happen here? So
In the United States, I think at best, because of how many guns are out there in ownership, at best.
Just as an aside, there are more guns in the U.S. than people.
Is that a statistic?
Yeah. Yes. I said I didn't say I wasn't going to throw that out
big
there.
picture. It's big picture.
It's not a statistic because there's no numbers. I just said there are more guns than people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've heard that before, but I think, I'm not a politician, but, I just have experience with, being around guns. And, if you want to hear that story at some point, we could talk about that too. But I think, the best we could hope for is more legislation and, reduce the type of guns that can be sold. And because you're not going to be able to go house to house with a squad of people taking guns away, because you're never going to get them all. You're never going to get them all. Now, ideally, where I stand politically, I would like to see no guns, because I'm a very nonviolent person in that regard. I don't even have a gun in the house.
It's kind of funny because I'm a nonviolent pacifist, but yet I own guns for defensive purposes.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't even like squash flies. I
don't either. I like everything goes outside. I catch things and yeah. So we're at least similar in that regard. I kind of wonder,
And me, I don't own a gun and I don't really want to ban them, but I'll squash a motherfucking fly.
Or a spider. No, yellow jackets. Fuck those fuckers. Oh my God. Yep, you're all dead. If you come in here, you're dead. This 1911 is blowing your fucking head off.
Do I hear an Onyx song playing?
I just, what you were saying, Casey, about the prohibition doesn't work. I mean, and we know it doesn't work. I don't think that more legislation around the tool is the solution. It seems like it could be, and you can look to various places and make comparisons, Japan or Australia, although Australia's an interesting case. But just simply legislating something away doesn't make it go away.
No, it doesn't.
Prostitution's illegal. Drugs are illegal. Well, illegal drugs are illegal. So, and actually, what you were saying, Randy, about the homeless population in Japan not using drugs, speaks a lot to how it's more a cultural thing than a regulatory thing. I don't know that you could just be like, well, we'll just carbon copy this thing and drop it in over here in the US, and well, everything will be exactly the same. I don't think so.
And it's probably because we're such a young nation that we need to have, several hundred more years of maturity. I mean, I always like to tell people, I said, hey, this is 2022, we should be better than this when it comes to hearing about things on the news. Like the other day, some guy went into Subway and shot the worker because they put too much mayonnaise on their sandwich. Look that one up. It happened.
Yeah, I did hear about that. That is crazy.
But did you know, speaking of making things illegal, did you know that you could go down to your local nursery and you can buy a packet of what are called red seed poppy seeds, and you can plant them in your garden and you can legally grow them. But once you slice the heads open to extract the latex for the morphine and codeine that's inside of them, it's a federal offense, but who's going to catch you?
Yes, I do actually know that. Don't ask me how, but I do know that. Yeah.
I'm kind of in the middle on this too. Like I can see the argument for culture being integral to that, and our culture is very much like born and bathed and marinated really in guns. Like they've just always been around. Somebody early on was like, oh, we got to write this shit into the Constitution, we want our guns, and that's you're not going to undo that, right? Like not enough to peacefully move towards something like that in a homogenous way.
Well, I don't. You can't just say, "Oh, well, we're going to pass legislation that has this expected result, and expect that result is going to come to fruition." The people who follow the law are law-abiding people. So to say, well, we're going to just ban guns and guns are going to go away. Well, that's not going to happen. Me as a person, I would like to defend myself. I believe most people are good, but there are bad people out there too. And when shit goes down, I want the ability to defend myself against bad people who want to do bad things to me and the people that I care about.
Here's a thought experiment. Let's say you and I are having an argument. Between us is a table, and on the table is a pencil and a gun. And you get pissed off at me and you want to attack me. Which one are you going to grab?
The potato.
I'd grab the table. Yeah. I would grab the pencil and just be like, whack. Hey, man. Because I don't want to hurt anybody. In fact, most uses of firearms, at least in the US, this is what I know, there are like millions of firearms, defensive uses of firearms in the US that don't result in anything happening. It's kind of like you just show, hey, I got a gun, and then people walk away.
Now you can do that with anything though. Like as long as the other person doesn't have it.
As long as the other person doesn't have a gun. Yeah.
No, like it doesn't matter. Like, here's the thing. I've done that with a knife and got somebody who was attacking me to run away.
But
did
they have a gun?
No, well, fuck, if they had a gun and they were going to use it, they would have used it before I got to my knife.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean that's how confrontation goes. The point I was trying to get at with my thought experiment, which you always ruin, is that
hey, don't say always.
Is that in the heat of the moment, if you want to kill someone right then and there, you're gonna go for the tool that will do it right then and there. But if something takes more effort, if something takes longer to do that thing with, by the time you're putting the effort in, you're already losing steam. Like you have a chance to cool your jets. And I think that's what we see more than culture in places like Japan and, all these other countries like Norway and stuff. And, I think
Norway
you just see hang on. I know where you're going with that. And it's a statistic. The thing about being able to let yourself cool off is a huge reason why you don't need to defend yourself, but you can always defend yourself. Like that's the false analogy, is that taking guns away means you cannot defend yourself.
Wait a second. Well, okay, so there's a lot of thoughts that like there's too many things, because I was going to say, like, what was the point of the thought experiment? What are you getting at? But
that you need to cool your jets.
Well, but no, I like bigger than that. Like, where is this going? Like, what is
guns are convenient. If you don't have time to cool your jets, you get gun violence. That's kind of the take home from that.
I don't know that. I think you're going to have to make a more compelling argument than that to convince me, at least. But you can't always defend yourself. Home invasions happen. If you're one person in a house, 3 people invade your house with pick a tool. They've got a crowbar, they've got a baseball bat, and one person has a gun. Which would you rather have to defend yourself? A gun or a pencil or a table?
I think you're making the same argument I am, just for a different reason, though. Like, it's the most convenient tool. It's the most deadly tool.
Yeah, that's exactly what makes it useful for defense.
Right. But the thing about this type of argument is that you always come down to the idea that guns will always be there. And that's not even the case in Japan. Like, if there's a home invasion in Japan, you can bet your ass they're not breaking in with a gun.
No, you can't.
There's very little crime like that as well. So
yeah,
like, there are still guns in Japan. It is possible. And not only that, but if you're an elderly person who doesn't have the physical strength to fight off like 3 people invading your house, they don't even need guns. They just have to be big and burly, and you stand no chance. Like, they could rape you, they could kill you, do whatever the hell they want to you, and you have no way to fight back. At least with some kind of firearm, you can level the playing field and stand a chance of defending yourself.
I don't want to go around and rape elderly people.
Well, I'm not saying you would, Randy. I'm just saying that people breaking in could, and they do. Like, that is a very real concern. And yeah, I know it's pretty easy talking statistics, right? Like, how often does that happen? Well, how often do you get a flat tire, but you still carry around a spare tire in your car, a car jack, some tools or something, right? If you're, halfway cognizant, you at least have like something for emergencies, some flares or something. Like, we hope it never happens, but if it does, it's nice to have those tools to be able to deal with that situation, and to take that away, because the thing is, like, it's already illegal to break into somebody's house. It's already illegal to rape somebody. It's already illegal to kill somebody, but people still do it. And if guns are illegal, well, then it would be illegal to have guns. But do you really think the people who are intent on doing harm are going to pay attention to that? They're going to be, oh, wait a minute, that's illegal. No, the people who follow the rules are going to be the ones that don't have the tools, while the people who don't follow the rules do. And
that is a problem with our like quasi-sovereign states, because there's too little geography. Like in Japan, like it would be like a trek to procure yourself a gun for a crime while still in the heat of the passion to commit the crime.
Okay, yeah, and that's true. And in fact, I just a little bit of an aside, I would ask people to, like, because people think Japan is very small. Look at how big Japan is in compared to, say, like the eastern coast of the US. It spans that whole entire space. It's a pretty big place. But yeah, being kind of isolated, in that case, you're right. Like it'd be very difficult to procure something. Now, granted, of course, you can make something if you're have like high school engineering.
You can make a bomb.
Printer.
You can make a bomb too, but it's the effort. That's the point. Is like when you introduce effort. I mean, like somebody can break into your house by busting a window, but you still lock your door, right? Like you increase somebody's effort in order to do something, and it acts as the deterrent. Like you don't need to get to the point of like, having to brandish a weapon or having to actually fight if you have a secure enough surrounding, right?
Yeah. No, you're correct in that. Well, okay. Let me just. There's so many different angles here. Need more beer.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a dystopian level crime scenario like
no, we
City
don't.
or anything.
And I want to keep this like, kind of, well, as lighthearted as it can be and friendly, because I think, we all agree on some of the fundamental principles, just maybe not necessarily the execution, and that's okay.
Interesting choice of words.
And we don't have to talk about Japan all the time as a reference. I mean, you can also take a look at Switzerland. Total opposite. Everybody has a gun because everybody's trained as militia in case they get invaded because they're a neutral country. They've got
but they are still trained.
But they're trained. Yeah, everybody has
the training. Okay, I take issue with the training thing. Okay, aside from accidents, right? Like training can fix that. Like people doing dumbass things, like trying to clean a gun and like it's chambered and they're looking down the barrel and like fidgeting. Okay, training can fix that, but training can't fix mental health. No, somebody going haywire and doing something bad, and guns don't even come into that equation. Like if you want to kill a bunch of people, you could find thousands of ways to do it.
Yes,
there was the guy, what guy in France or something that like drove a big van through a crowd of people and killed like what did he kill, like 80 people or something?
That's happened here too. Like the big thing I love, I think all three of us can agree mental health is important and we should make it more accessible. Yes. And culturally, I want to say we should be less critical of people who have mental health issues, and so that they're willing to get help. And this is one of the things that bugs me about the red flag laws is like, well, it actually kind of counteracts what it's hoping to do. Because if you go to a doctor, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling suicidal, you're feeling out there or something, and with the way things are going, you say you have some guns and you're like, I'm feeling something, but I want to get help.
But if I get help, they're going to be like, oh, you're crazy. Well, we're going to take your guns away. Well, then now the people with the guns don't want to get help. We should be totally okay with anybody getting help for any reason at all.
Yeah. But I'm not 100% against red flags because I mean, I have mental health issues, not to the point where I've lost control of myself, but to the point where like I'll talk myself out of owning a gun because of my mental health issues. Like I'm making that judgment call for myself.
And that's good because a lot of people don't do that.
Well, and that brings me to my other point. Like the other thing I think we can all agree is that training is important, not necessarily to prevent accidents alone, but to instill a respect for the deadliness of the weapon.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I think that's the golden nugget right there for training.
I grew up around guns. My father was a Vietnam veteran with undiagnosed PTSD. He got into hunting and gun collecting and stuff, and so I grew up around them, and I knew I knew the risks were, and I knew he did keep the ammo stored separately from the guns, but he did keep some guns in his safe, loaded at times, and had a few guns around the house just in case for defensive purposes that were loaded, but they were put in places where a child like me could not get to them. But this was all made very, very clear to me. But he had over 60 weapons. And he had this massive gun safe in our living room. And you walk into our house, and the first thing you would see is this big, huge gun safe. And he oftentimes got off on opening it up when I had friends over there, showing off some of the stuff that he had. And he eventually went nuts, and he became a really serious in the dumpster alcoholic, and now he's in a care facility. He's got dementia. But he attempted a police suicide back in 2007 in Reston on New Year's Eve. It was a 14-hour standoff. And that's how he was for the last couple of years as it built up to that. SWAT team came over, blew out every single window in the house. There were 40 canisters of tear gas we recovered on the inside. House was a total loss, so that had to go back to the bank. But I've seen him pull a shotgun on my sister before. I've seen him do other things with guns while he was drinking and having issues. And quite oftentimes he would have the police called on him towards the end there and until that big final standoff. And he would not go to the VA and get the help that he needed. And he wouldn't, quit drinking. But, when you have undiagnosed PTSD, I mean, a lot of veterans who come home have that.
So
and then,
that's where a red flag law actually would have saved a lot of heartache.
Right.
Yeah. And no, I, as much as I don't like the idea of people being able to essentially swat an ex that they don't like or something like that.
Right.
It does kind of make sense. If you are exhibiting, and this is something, I don't want to go into statistics, but it's something that happens time and time again where people, family members, loved ones, they see somebody that they know getting out of hand, like losing control, going off the rails, and they know that they're dangerous. They're a threat to other people, and they tell the authorities, right? They call the cops or something and like, hey, this person's a danger. You got to do something. And they're like, well, we can't really do anything. And then they go and shoot up a school or something. It happens more often than it should. So yeah, within reason, I think it makes sense. And it's kind of no different whether it's cops and the governmental system or your family members that care about you. We have yet to see how discerning they are. Like it just got signed into federal law. It hasn't actually started happening yet. Yeah. And okay, so I guess I will throw this caveat out here with red flag laws. I'm okay with them as long as a false alarm is harshly punished. If it's proven that you essentially swatted somebody for no reason, well, you should go to prison. It should be a very harsh punishment for a false alarm. Like, because
I agree with
that's
that. I mean,
really the only concern that I
pretty
have.
nasty to do to somebody.
Yeah. And not only that, but if somebody really is mentally unstable and they're kind of on the edge, they're all like, oh, tinfoil hat, like, oh, they're out there to get me. And you say, oh, this person's crazy and you should take their guns away. Well, I mean, you can only imagine the outcome that could occur there. Like, that is a recipe for disaster. Like, you'd better be damn sure that they're an actual threat, and have some evidence at least. So yeah, because lots of cops and innocent civilians have been killed because of stuff like that.
Yeah.
When I was in middle school, and Casey knows about this, I was what they call today bullied by a number of individuals because I was a geek, a dork. I came out as a Star Trek fan, and so I would get like nanu and all kinds of weird stuff to me, and people would make fun of me and insult me, and I used to go into the counselor's office all the time there to basically report it and ask for some help and some guidance on there. The counselor was totally useless, but I never once ever thought about grabbing one of my father's guns and taking it to school. And I think one of the reasons behind that was because of how I was raised around them, and I didn't have any mental issues going on, where I was like, deep down depressed. My family wasn't broken at that time. I wasn't abused. I didn't have, demons and voices going on in my head. I was just a normal 7th grader, just trying to, get some of my homework turned in on time and enjoy a pastime that I liked, but all the people thought was dorky. But I never once thought of inflicting any violence on them whatsoever. I do recall one time I was making a list though in class because I was bored. I was making a list of the people who've been picking on me. Now that might be something one would consider to be a red flag, but I never once thought about like doing anything about it.
It doesn't have to, like I think people really overreact when it comes to warning signs. And I get it. Like you have to take stuff like that seriously. But I think you also need to really I think it needs to be a trigger to look at them closer and not just do a knee-jerk reaction.
I totally agree. And Randy, yes, I was one of those people. Or I still am one of those people too.
We all are, I think.
Yeah, we're all nerds. And it's okay. Yeah. I remember some similar situations, but yeah, I grew up around guns, never felt like, oh, I need to act out in anger against these other people, especially now, with my own personal philosophy, like the initiation of force can never be justified is kind of the core philosophical tenet of my beliefs. So
that's how I was raised too. Like, I shot guns when I was in like the 3rd, 4th grade or whatever. And I learned to respect the tool early on, but I was also bullied a bunch and like spit on and everything, like just really inhumane shit, or dehumanizing, I should say. And no, I never had one of those thoughts either. Like the most violent, I would not fight back. My dad told me to fucking punch these people. He's like, I'm sick of this shit. Next time they call you a nerd, just punch them. And I was like, no, I don't want to. Like the most violent I got was thinking about martial arts, like learning martial arts to defend myself.
Which is actually badass. Like okay, look, I could come in with the AK, but I don't. I'm just going to kick your ass with my bare fucking hands. Like, that's pretty cool. Yeah. And, it's kind of like,
And then that's not just because we were raised around guns. It's because we were raised right.
true.
And there's a lot going into that.
Exactly. I know the first time I shot a gun, I had suddenly gained a great amount of respect for that tool. Like, whoa, this is not a cap gun. Holy shit. Like, whoa, did you see what that did to that thing? But I think this kind of what we're talking about, it really illustrates how important mental health is. Because I do like, I like tools. So guns are tools. I like guns too. They're kind of fun. It's cathartic to shoot stuff. But I would never use a firearm in anger against somebody else. I don't care how depressed I am. And I might be a functioning alcoholic. But that would never come to my mind to use a firearm against somebody else in anger, especially randomly. But mental health is so important. Like, the difference between me and the guy that shot up the school a while back is mental health.
Yeah.
It isn't the guns.
But you know what? Like, I fully 100% agree with that, but I do see weakness in, even if we provided like all the free mental health care, people will slip through those cracks too. Just like the argument, right. If you ban guns, only outlaws will have guns and stuff. Yeah, that is true. That will happen a little bit. That's why you need to find that happy triangle of things that are kind of checked and balancing each other to where you get as few problems as possible.
Okay, you're correct. And if mental health is addressed, then we could have a conversation about regulatory solutions to firearms.
Well, yeah, because where do these kids get these guns from?
Yeah.
And, maybe if they enforced the proper storage like they do in Japan, and like maybe random inspections to make sure that storage is enforced, in my argument, some of that could be prevented. Because, like I said, my father had guns, in the gun safe. It wasn't locked half the time. He had a couple of handguns stored around here and there in the house. So I knew where they were at. I could have easily grabbed one and, done something with one, but I just knew better, and I never did that. So yeah, where do these guns come from? If mental health can't be addressed, or if nobody's coming forward and getting the help that they need, how come these kids are still getting their hands on weapons?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, those kinds. Well, it's like drugs. Well, where is all the fentanyl coming from? Well, it's traffickers that traffic these things because there's a demand for it.
But does a 13-year-old know how to use the black market, though? I mean,
if they have connections, possibly. Well, in fact, they're probably using. They're beyond Tor now.
All it takes to get to the dark web or whatever is a friend that knows how. Like, that's it. It's actually pretty easy to do bad things in this country. Like,
yeah, and that's why I think like we shouldn't be concerning ourselves with the tools. We should be concerning ourselves with the why. Like, I have all these tools, and I have never ever, in fact, having all these tools kind of makes me hesitant to even bring them out. Like, So
as you have them laying around like they're passed out from a drunken debauchery.
in a video that okay, yeah. Well, I kind of brought stuff out. Well, Randy, you dressed up for the beginning of this video, so.
But I wouldn't wear that to the grocery store, which, which
No, oh my God.
Yeah, right. Which, by the way, the reason why I wore that is we often hear this argument by the right that says, well, the Nazis came to power and they took everybody's guns away and they took everybody's freedom, and that's what the Dems and the left wants to do in this country. And well, doing some research on the subject, they just took the guns away from the Jews. Hitler was actually pro-gun ownership, and they had a permit system there where you bought a gun, you filled out a permit. Not everybody used that system. So
and that stuff was written into law 4 years before Hitler took power.
Right, exactly. And,
so it wasn't really him doing it.
No. It was just, it was the Weimar Republic that where the gun laws came from. And a lot of people had guns that they owned from before World War I that were never registered. But no, they just didn't want the Jews to have guns. And then they did use the permit system to see who had guns, and if they turned into being like a communist or an enemy of the state, then they could go out and confiscate their guns, knowing that they had a weapon registered in their name.
Are you? Sorry, are you making my argument for me there?
Well, I mean, I wanted to bring this up to clarify what the right likes to say.
Yeah, no, yes, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah,
about that,
and opinions and stuff, and especially when they say, "Oh, well, it's our God-given right." Like, where in the Second Amendment does it say it's a God-given right?
Yeah, I think the God-given part comes from the Declaration of Independence, maybe.
There's a lot going on there.
Well, and
Yeah,
this is I as an anarchist, like, I fucking hate the Constitution. I hate it.
I do too.
Yeah,
I do as well, and I wish we could make some changes to it.
Yeah,
I wish we could just get rid of it. We don't need anybody telling us. Like, I am a independent living being who deserves to live and be who I want to be.
But if you're black, you'd only be 3/5 of a person.
Well, okay. Yeah, under the early rules. That's true. Yeah.
I wonder if by the time this episode comes out, the Supreme Court's going to bring that shit back. Even Clarence Thomas.
Wouldn't that be amusing?
I would not be surprised at this point.
Well, I see government.
They put prayer in schools. And I don't say put back, because like separation of church and state has been a thing for a long, long time.
And
they put prayers in schools.
Well, kinda. What you mean, kinda?
They kicked the door open, at least.
Yeah, like, well, this is what happens when you have government. I'm just gonna say,
the Supreme Court right now is the bad guy with the gun.
Yeah. Well, so don't you want guns now? Like, when the bad guy comes in with,
I'm a fucking ninja, dude. I could take him out without a
gun. Can you dodge bullets?
Maybe.
Like, well, I wouldn't be surprised, but not everybody can do that. And I guess, oh man, oh my God, there's so many different thoughts now, so many different angles. Holy shit. I need more beer again.
Guns.
So, okay, I would ask both of you, since I feel a bit outnumbered right now, do you support the defund the police movement?
Who wants to go first?
I do. In the respects of like its deeper meaning, like spread the funds out into like give mental health a little more over to social workers, etc., yada yada.
Okay, yes, I kind of like that idea. Yeah.
I agree with Casey, but however, I do agree that we need police, but we need to have police officers who are less racist. I've got a friend from college who became a police officer, and he's one of the most racist, bigoted guys I know. He works for the Seattle Police Department, and I'm just waiting for him to get caught in some kind of a scandal with a black driver.
That job attracts that kind of person,
and I hate
because they don't have accountability and everybody knows it.
Right. And so
Well,
then
and-
all these body cams, and then what, you know, that only helps to a certain extent. They're still going to have bad things.
At the end of the day, your life is all you have. So wouldn't you want the ability to defend yourself against some kind of bigoted cop? Because you know, in what we're talking about here, your ideal world, only cops would have guns, and the military, which the military is responsible for far more deaths than any civilian firearm owners. But
Of course,
yeah, wars kill hundreds of thousands of people. Like, you think a school shooting where 10 people die is a bad thing. Oh yeah, look at World War II. How many civilians died there?
Oh, way too many. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
What about this situation though? So let's say this cop pulls you over, and you both have guns. You got a gun in your car, and he's got a gun on this person ready to go. But for some reason, he's on some kind of a power streak or whatever, and he asks you to step outside of the car, and you decide, because of what's going on and how he's treating you, it's time to grab the gun and defend yourself. Who's going to get shot? You are, because you're not going to have enough response time to be ready unless that gun was on your person.
Well, it depends on your training, I guess.
Even if you got first shot off, you would be hunted down and killed by the other cops.
Okay, yes, Casey, you're right. There'd be helicopters flying around. There'd be MRAPs like driving down the streets to hunt you down and execute
Police
you.
power is not in having guns at all. Like, that's like 10% of it.
So I would ask then, because I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Like, you know, we're going up about policing all wrong. But then if we get rid of the police and we get rid of guns, who defends you? Like, when you call 911, who is coming to your door to help you? And how long is it going to take? I mean, there's that saying, you know, when the seconds count, the police are minutes away.
The police don't do anything anyway, and
But no,
they never were tasked to be Batman and just show up just in the nick of time and stop the criminal from shooting you.
No, they only show up after the fact. But that's the point, is like, when there's somebody breaking into your house and like okay, I was gonna say killing your dog, but that would be the FBI.
It's a bit like setting up bowling pins with a feather and saying, I'm taking this feather away. Now let's see you knock those down without a bowling ball. You know, like,
wait, what? Hold on a second. What? I'm just talking about, like, you know,
I'm just saying the police were never really like protectors. So
police,
like saying, oh, what if you don't have these protectors anymore?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, okay, you're correct. But if you don't have those like presumed protectors, like, what do you got? What choices do you have?
Exactly what we have now. And that's what I'm saying. Like,
guns.
You can't rely on the police now. Even if they weren't here, you would have exactly what you have now.
I live in Snohomish County, and whenever I have to call the police, because I'm right across the Linwood city line, I'm in unincorporated Snohomish County, I have to call and ask 911 to give me Snohomish County police. It takes them 2 hours to respond to anything.
Jesus. And that's the thing. It's like, who's going to protect you? Who's going to help you? The only person that can help you is yourself. Like, if your kids are being killed or raped, your wife, like your grandma or grandpa or something is being murdered. Like, what do you got? What? Oh yeah, call somebody on the phone and hope the fuck they show up. Like, no, I want a tool I can use right now. I can defend myself. Yes, it may not be ideal, but it at least puts me on the same playing field as the other person, or close to it. And that's kind of like, I consider this whole thing kind of a dichotomous situation. It's like, on one hand, I think we need tools to defend ourselves. Okay, today it's guns, tomorrow it's going to be lasers. Like, we're going to have this conversation in 20 years.
My point always comes down to, you will always be able to defend yourself. It's like you said.
No,
you gotta let me finish
I haven't
this.
finished my point though.
But
Okay.
you said like that was badass that you could just go get a gun, but instead you're like, I'm gonna kick your ass. Like, it always comes down to that. You can just kick somebody's fucking ass.
Had training.
No, I didn't. Not then.
Well, not everybody training skills, like it depends on how much experience you have. A handgun, a rifle, a shotgun, it's pretty universally usable by anybody. You point and you shoot.
Kind of part of the problem, I think.
Well, but I would argue not. In fact, I think that's part of the solution. But my point that I was getting to is that 20 years from now, we won't be talking about guns. We'll be talking about lasers. And the next generation of, it'll be nanobots or something. Oh, militarized nanobots are going to be the thing. It doesn't matter the tool. It matters what the people who seek to do you harm have, and having a tool that you can defend yourself against that with. Like, sure, this 1911 today, pretty capable, but 20 years from now, this is going to be shit. Like, I'm going to have a phaser or some kind of like energy weapon to defend against the energy weapons of everybody else.
Well, okay, so devil's advocate, using your own argument, you're never really going to ever have a chance to have the even playing field or the upper hand, because somebody else is always developing the next best way to kill people. Like,
yes, they are. But the point is, like, not having, okay, if the whole world, if all the militaries and the police forces and all the bad guys are using energy weapons, and the best thing you have to defend yourself against that is some kind of matchlock pistol, I mean, you're kind of assed out at that point. Like, you might as well be flinging around like a piece of paper.
I guess it comes back to the like, the hyperbole gets washed away by seeing these other countries that, you can point to their cultural differences all you want, but like, they're still human beings, like 99.99999% the same, like on a molecular level, on a neuron level, whatever, like, you peel away the melanin and we're pretty much the same thing.
I agree.
And
on that front, yeah.
And yet you don't have like all these sinister, like, evil, cancerous people like taking over. I mean, it's always blown out of proportion on both sides, and that's why I tend to like fall in what I consider the middle. But like, it's not ever really as bad as it's made out to be. Obama came. Everyone was like, Obama's going to take your guns, and he came in with like the House and the Senate and did nothing.
Well, okay. You're right. Again, I would ask, like, okay, when somebody breaks into your house, who are you going to call? Who defends you?
I grabbed my Joe staff.
But that's you. I mean,
It's what I have, though, and by choice.
yeah. But what if they outlaw Joe staffs?
Well, that's the funny thing, right? Nobody gives a shit. You basically can't carry a knife. Yeah, they outlawed swords. They quietly took concealed weapons permits and turned them into pistol licenses.
Yes.
You know, like they
At least
worded it in such a way so that it's like, oh, you can only have a pistol hidden away now.
But that doesn't
nobody cares about that.
quite answer my question. My question is basically like,
It's not the tool, it's how you use it.
well, yeah, but it's like,
If
what do you do?
If you have a
What
gun and I have a
you
gun,
have? Like, it's kind of, imagine if I don't know, there's some kind of environmental rigmarole going on, and like, oh, tires are a problem, so you can't carry a spare tire. That's kind of how I see it. Like, you need to have a spare tire. You got to have a jack to jack your car up to put the tire on the car. You got to have a gas can so you can fill it. Oh, but you can't have a gas can because Inslee doesn't like that now. Well, they've already fucked the gas can. But
you're talking about preventative measures, and I can get where there's an argument that it's preventative, but that's like, and that's if it's something on display. You know, here's the thing about gun versus gun and why it's not an upper hand is that it all comes down to who draws first. Like, if we're not within hand-to-hand combat territory and you have a gun and I don't, yeah, you win. If you have a gun and I have a gun and you're a little faster than me, I still lose.
That's actually not true. That's
and it's
like,
not like if
no.
you come in with a gun and I took you by surprise because I heard you breaking the glass, like, it's not like you're magically going to shoot me behind
that's
you.
like movie. I mean,
well, no, it's not.
Yeah,
like,
did you see what happened in Tacoma yesterday? There were so many shots fired, and like, I think 18 people were hit and 2 people died. There were hundreds of shots fired. People were shooting all over the place. One shot doesn't equal 1 kill unless you're a fucking sniper.
Okay, I didn't say that, but what the hell happened where?
You said it was Tacoma. I never heard of this.
Yeah, it was Tacoma. Yeah.
Monday.
Yeah. There was a shootout, like a legit shootout, like old school style. People just.
Wow, I did not hear about that.
Was it like what, East Side or Hilltop or?
I think so, and that's on the heels of that rave shootout that happened a day before.
Yeah, that I was actually like within 2 hours of being right in the middle of it.
Yeah. But my point is, like, just because you have a gun doesn't mean, like, a shot doesn't equal a kill.
No, it doesn't.
In fact, people get shot all the time. Well, as the previous event demonstrates.
And that's why I say it's not the tool, it's the user, you know, like how you
yes. And I think we agree on that. And this is why I think mental health is so important. Like, I got a bunch of guns. Like, when have I ever gone on a shooting spree? I have that P90 over there with 50 rounds in that magazine, but I have never shot anybody with it.
But that is anecdotal. I mean, like, and I don't. This
some
is why
of your arguments are also anecdotal too. I mean, you know.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is, like, this is why I don't like statistics and stuff like that, is because then it feels like there's too much reliance on how probable something is, and that somehow should erase the tragedy of life lost that was like unnecessary.
No,
You know?
okay, I agree. Like, and yeah, well, the entire world is probabilistic. But yeah, maybe looking at things through numbers alone is pretty bad. Like, we shouldn't do it.
That's a lot of what bothered me about the COVID pandemic, is that people were like, well, in the scheme of things, it's not that many people dying. More people die of the flu. You know, it became all these comparisons and
or even like in support of what you believe. Like, so many people died. Like,
during COVID, you remember how many school shootings we had while everything was locked down and shut down?
0.
Yeah. So that's
an
interesting discussion point.
I will concede to the fact that, like, you have a 0% chance of being bit by a shark if you never swim in the ocean.
Okay. Yep. Good point. Well taken. Yes, that is true.
but I mean, like, it was a nice reprieve from all the, you know, news stories about kids being killed, which is, you know, a bummer.
Well, and one of the problems I have is the news stories.
It is like, emotional appeal, but
well, yeah, and it also like sensationalizes
that's
stuff. Yeah. And here's the thing, like,
but they are still tragic. I mean,
very, absolutely tragic. But I kind of think, like, we should be looking at things from a solution standpoint. Like, how can we solve this? How can we balance the force, essentially? Like, the first thing, don't sensationalize things. And fuck if you say the perpetrator's name. Never name names. Please do not do that. It happens time and time again. Like, we hear the name of a person, and that just encourages somebody else who's mentally unstable and has things going on in their head to do something,
giving them attention. You mean?
Yeah, exactly. We should not do that. Yeah. And like
that's a good point.
I want to talk about solutions. Like, how can we actually solve this?
Yeah, let's actually jump into that. Like, if you had to concede, and I think you were kind of touching on this with like red flag laws, if you had to concede, Eric, to some kind of additional regulation that made it harder for you to get the gun that you want, what do you think is the most, like, plausible thing that makes sense on that? And then I would, you know, ask the same of Randy on the opposite side.
Start with Randy. Okay.
Mandatory drug test and mandatory mental health evaluation at the bare minimum, maybe along as well as like a little physical thing. I mean, if I've got to do this kind of stuff when I go fly an airplane, like I said earlier at the beginning, you know, why shouldn't you have to? Why can't you do this if you want to own a gun? You got to prove that you're stable. You got to prove that you're not, you know, shooting up heroin, or you've got, you know, controlled substances in your system, and you've got to prove that you're physically able. You know, you don't want to. I mean, if you're 70 years old and you're shooting a shotgun and you're getting kind of old and weak, and it kicks back and knocks you over, I mean, that can cause an injury to yourself. Not fatal, but you know, that's maybe a bad argument for that. I don't know, but I mean, just, you know, get the mental evaluation from somebody who is a psychiatrist, not just from, like, you know, a questionnaire that has like 10 boxes that says, have you ever thought about killing yourself? You know, do you have problems sleeping? Do you feel depressed? You actually have to sit down with a psychiatrist and spend some time and basically have them certify you by checking you out and checking your mannerisms and seeing, you know, how you tick. And then, of course, you know, go pee in a thing and make it a 5-panel. You know, it doesn't have to be a 25 panel drug test. Just, you know, check for the big ones, check for cocaine, check for, opiates, check for benzos, check for, I mean, I would even say this might be an argument for another show, check for weed, and
Oh,
Well, it is a mild psychedelic. It does affect mood.
check for alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like right on both counts. So like people think just because they're so pervasive in our culture that they're without detriment, but that's far from true.
Okay, I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say, do we ask the same questions for the politicians we vote for who send our children to war?
I think we should too. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a lefty, but I think Nancy Pelosi could use a breathalyzer check every morning.
Yes, she is like drunk all the time.
She gets so much money from Carlo Rossi, it's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you follow the Pelosi investment scheme, you will become a millionaire, if not a billionaire.
Well,
yeah.
Anyways, yeah, I'm a lefty and I hate half of our Democratic reps. I hate the ones from Washington State. Don't get me started on Patty Murray. They don't accurately represent me and my interests.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. Oh man. Oh, you made some really, really good points there. Holy shit. Man.
And should that apply also to whenever you want to get a concealed carry permit? Should you also have to do the same thing as well? Not just when you buy the weapon, but also when because I mean, open carry is one thing, or you're going duck hunting, you throw it in the back of the truck. That's one deal. But like if you want to conceal carry, because if you're walking through Pioneer Square on your way to work or something, and you don't want to have any issues with the hobos, I mean, should you also make sure that you're mentally certified to have that concealed carry permit as well?
I mean, I actually think we're far too lax with driver's licenses. I think that should be something that you also have to periodically retest on, take some training on. Like you might have a lot of real world experience, but you also build in a lot of muscle memory for real bad habits too. And
no, that's actually a really good point.
Periodically checking in with people and re-upping licenses and stuff like that. And the background checks might not cover everything. Life happens. I might be perfectly sane today, and 5 years from now, a complete fucking lunatic.
Yeah.
And look at home environment too. I would throw in maybe.
Sure. And I would ask, like, one of the problems I have with things like red flag laws and regulations and permits and stuff is that, things change like the wind. Okay, hold on. I'm like overwhelmed. But wait,
Are you having a problem with what's being licensed, or just that the government exists and licenses things? Or
both?
Is that where you're being pulled?
Both, but I guess I have a problem with, like, who decides? Like, if there is a mental health check, who decides who is right and who is wrong? I mean, because politics dictates the rightness and wrongness by, like 4-year terms, and essentially. And so, like, if you're one of the others, well, you're not now allowed to possess those things.
I think criteria like that basically could be very simple. It's just looking for violent behavior, vengeful thoughts, harmful thoughts.
True. Yes, I agree. However, it's not as simple as that. Like, they don't look at those criteria. They claim to, but I worry that there's going to come a time, and this goes back to like the origin of this episode with Randy and his attire. What happens if, say, the others take control of the system and decide for all of us what is right and what is wrong? How do we know? Can we build a system that is immune to that? I don't think so.
Abolish the parties. Follow George Washington's
yes.
advice.
Yes. Fuck yeah.
On when he gave his retirement speech, he recommended us not to go down the path of political parties. And if we get rid of the parties, we can hang on, it's just a message here. Okay. And if we get rid of the parties and maybe voted for candidates by what they stood for versus party lines.
Yes.
And if people would actually read the voters' pamphlet.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm one of those.
Rather than looking at like the D's and the R's and just checking whatever they align with.
I don't know if you've watched enough of the show, Randy, to hear me say this before, but I think when people are running for office, it needs to be like, what was it, Love Connection or whatever, where like people were shrouded and like you couldn't see anything about them. Like you had no clue who they were. You just heard what they had to say.
Yes.
That would work wonderfully too. I like that idea as well. And then, of course, the big one for me, term limits, because we don't need politicians. No more Mitch McConnells or Nancy Pelosi's or any of those, because and look at it like jury duty. That's the other thing too, is like, maybe people should just get randomly selected to serve 2 years in government.
Like my idea of a
lottery.
A lottery system.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That way there's no way, people can be biased towards one person or the other, and maybe you get 2 years worth of some right-leaning people, and you get 2 years worth of left-leaning people, or maybe you'll find out that the vast majority actually is not right-winged, and I don't really know how that system would work, but it's just more of like a wet dream.
Or maybe we wouldn't even look at left and right anymore, but just like
because the political parties wouldn't even matter at that point.
Right.
Like that wouldn't be a thing anymore.
Yeah.
So, and then just keep them limited to that short term, and then once they're done with it, then they go back home. So it's like like you're drafted into the army, except you're in the army of government, and now you got to make laws and stuff for the people that and then when you're done making those laws, then you're out of there.
That's actually that's a pretty good point.
We're sitting here being like the founding fathers of the next great nation.
Yes. Oh man. Oh, it will be. It will be.
I mean that's the thing, isn't it? Like you have to look back and say, okay, that was a good idea, but it kind of fucked up. Here's how we could make it better if we had a chance to do it over again. And every now and then you gotta just do it over again. Like
you're right. Like yes,
you can't really fix everything piece by piece. Sometimes you got to level it.
You are correct. Like the founding fathers were smart people, but they're not gods. They're not infallible.
Infallible.
Exactly. It is an evolutionary process. Like we learn things, we try things, we make mistakes, and that's okay. This is something like really drives me up the wall about people, is like, oh, well, the founding fathers, like they were like the smartest people in the world. Well, it's like, well, this country is only 200 years old. Really? You can't.
It's religious thinking.
It is. Yes, it is.
And what about the Constitution being a living document that's supposed to be changed whenever we screw up somewhere? It
Which
hasn't been changed that much.
Yeah.
Interesting you bring that up because Thomas Jefferson, one of the people that all of the founding father people really love, he thought that too. Like, there will come a time where we as a nation will recognize, well, this isn't quite working, and we're going to burn it down and start over.
And that's not even forward thinking. That was him being like, look at how this shit fucked up over time.
Yeah.
He was backward thinking. He's doing what we need to be doing now and saying, hey, we knew what we knew then and we know what we know now. We need to change that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, they're like, oh, well, it's good that it's hard to change the Constitution. And it's like, well, how's it going to be a living document if you're choking it? Like, if you can change it and you fucked it up that way, you can change it back. But if you make it hard to change, no one's going to agree on the change and nothing happens. That's how you get this fucking mess.
It was built on the concept of individuality. And if it doesn't continue to exist in that time, that framework, well, it's bullshit. Like, it's no different than a dictatorship.
I'll say it's a lofty Borg-like goal to craft a communal area on the ideals of an individual. If you think about it. I don't know.
And then you get these politicians in their parties who you submit these changes to. You say, hey, let's make an amendment for term limits. Let's modify the Second Amendment. Let's do this. And then you get this one particular political party who may be in the majority who says, no, we're in the majority and we're going to say no. Plus, we also like to keep our jobs for the rest of our lives because we've got our districts so gerrymandered all backwards and stuff that there's no way we can lose anyways. Abolish gerrymandering and
okay,
lobbyists, get rid of lobbyists.
There's a lot of things that I agree with as an anarchist. Small baby steps, right? Like little at a time.
I'll agree that like a small reaching government is a good idea, but it should be buttressed. Like it should be efficient, like useful and efficient in such a way that it's like minimalistically impactful on you. Like Randy, you said something to the effect of your taxes were just a little bit, your healthcare was $30 and everything was covered,
Yeah, but they also don't have the military budget that the United States does.
Well, that's where the efficiency angle comes in, right? Like if we actually budgeted the money, even like a quarter of the money that we're giving them in taxes, we could probably do more than what we're doing now.
Well, and I would ask the question, like, why do we have to defer to another person to do something you could do yourself?
But you can't do everything yourself. It's like your argument with the old person who gets somebody
I didn't
like
say
breaking
everything.
in.
I just said the things that you. I can pay the bills, clean the floors and stuff like that. Like, I don't need a god or I don't know, some kind of dictator to do that for me. So why do we need that? Like, what?
That's a whole other discussion. I think I don't know that we should really like diverge down that road so much right now.
I feel like it's kind of relevant, but okay.
I mean, it is, but like I said at the headway, like I know we would get way off the rails if we started talking about how government should or should not exist. Like,
Yeah.
it's too big of a conversation. And
It is. Yes.
It really
All
doesn't
right.
have anything to do with
Yeah.
guns if you really look at it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it does, but it doesn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, this is, I mean, we're an hour and a half in. This is actually a pretty good point to probably cinch things up on for now. Like, I think we actually came to a point where we were all talking about things that we agreed on and solutions and stuff like that. And that's the important takeaway, is that like we all want to solve the same problems. And if we start focusing on that, rather than like, oh, that side thinks this and that side wants to do that, and we start looking at like fixing shit, maybe we could actually like do something.
No, you're totally correct. Like it, and that's a good point. Like, if we actually, as a species, focused on solving problems, well, we'd be demonetized.
What's really funny is that for this episode, I reached out to several people who I know of. One's a 20-year retired Army infantry veteran who lives in Idaho. Another one is who's in the Air Force for 8 years. He lives here in town in Linwood. And I invited them along to this as well to give the perspective of the right, because they spar with me on Facebook about left and right wing stuff and gun rights and whatnot quite often, and one more so than the other. And they said, well, podcast. Okay, that sounds interesting. What's the name of it? Let me go check it out. And both of them had that same response. And then the answer I got back from both of them was, no, I don't feel comfortable doing this. So I'm going to have to pass. And they spend a lot of energy and time, going around saying, Second Amendment and guns and it's my, whatever, and all this stuff, and we love Trump and whatever, but they don't seem to have the balls to defend their opinions in front of a couple of people who are on different sides of the spectrum. I mean, it's I was kind of hoping for at least one of them to be on here to kind of give some justification for what's going on the insides of a person on the right. But yeah, they both chickened out.
That is disappointing. Like, I mean, my gut reaction is that like if you don't have a lot of evidence or good reasoning or logic behind your position, you might be leery of going to bat for it. But
yeah. Well, so I guess they're gonna have to settle for an anarchist defending the positions they defend. Well, see you, space cowboy.
I mean, that is interesting, and I was watching the analytics and a lot of our videos, like one of Eric's earliest minute microscopies on independence has had like a huge spike in views ever since we started talking about doing this episode. And so I think that might have been a lot of your buddies there being like, oh, let's see what they think of independence,
Oh, okay.
Oh man.
And it's funny that was Eric's minute microscopy, and they were like, you guys are too left.
Yeah. It is funny when people say that I'm left. I'm like,
thing is, you are like in the global idea of conservative and liberal, America is hella conservative. Like even the most left-leaning people are like really fucking conservative compared to the rest of the world.
I'm a communist, so
it's just crazy because like in my experience, well, I guess, kind of. I don't know if there's political spectrums. Like, I think that's kind of a
It's dumb.
bad idea.
Yeah.
It's a very easy way to divide people. Like,
And we like putting people into buckets.
we do. We definitely do. And it's harmful. Like,
It's
as
also our
Casey was
nature,
saying,
though.
well, it is. And, as you're saying, Casey, like, at the end of the day, we're all humans. Like, we're kind of experiencing the same stuff. I guess we all bleed red, right?
Yeah.
So,
Unless
Well,
you're an octopus, then you're blue.
oh yeah, true.
Not everybody has the same chemical elements in their blood,
yeah.
Well, your damn Vulcan green blood.
Had to interject a little Star Trek in there.
Yeah.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
That would be actually an interesting episode to do sometime, is like Star Trek and guns or phasers, like,
Oh.
I had that thought.
yeah.
Oh, we should.
Like you don't see much of it when they're on Earth or whatever, but also
Nobody has talked about that. We are like the nerds enough that could do this.
I've got a whole box full of phasers over there.
Oh, hell yeah.
I could do what Eric's doing. I could just lay them out, put them on the wall up here, tie one around my neck on a lanyard.
But do you have an actual functioning phaser
That shoots an actual beam? No, but I have ones that make lights and sound.
That's more than most toys do. Oh my god! What
Well, that might be a fun one to do. Well, I know you've got to run off and be a dad.
Yeah, I got to do dad stuff here.
So, well, thank you very much for coming on and giving some Japanese and Third Reich perspective.
I'm not gonna sing Hail.
I actually had an idea to make an entry on this, when Casey was doing the introductions, but I decided not to do it. I was going to goose step my way over and then swap back there, but my wife's a little ill today, and so she's not feeling too well, and the least I can annoy her, the better. So,
well, we really appreciate you coming on the show. Like, as always, definitely like probably some of our best stuff.
Oh yeah,
I like being a continued guest star, and plus dressing up's kind of fun. So usually I'll work Trek related.
It very much is, and yeah.
When I die, and let's face it, I'm going to be the first to go. Maybe you could take my spot, Randy.
Okay, could do that.
Mhm.
But I think you'll be around for a while. You've got all those stem cells in there doing all that hard work. So
maybe we could make this show be like an evolutionary thing. Like, it just keeps going.
It never dies.
Yeah. Like, we might be, it could be 100 years that we've been dead, but the show's still going on.
kind of like Star Trek,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Or Leonard Skinner, they just keep getting new people. And
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh, Blue Oyster Cult. Hell yeah. Oh.
All right. Well, Speaking of music, you probably hear some music coming in right now.
Oh yeah.
And it's pretty awesome, isn't it?
Very. So thank you, Randy, for hanging out with us to the end of the episode.
Thanks for the music.
Oh yeah.
Oh, he's got it bumping in his headphones. Crank that shit up to 11.
There's no God to judge me. No devil to push me. The ship of fools I see needs to sink in due time, and I will be the storm. See the hatred in my eyes. There's no God to judge me. No devil